I want to give you just a short amount of background so you'll know our size and budget. Pottsboro, about 2,300 people. Service areas, about 3,400. It's a community that inside city limits is pretty much lower income, and there are very few businesses. So there's not a tax base that the city can provide us. But outside it's a lake resort community. So many people have weekend homes and then eventually retire here. 10 years ago, the library was completely donations, completely volunteer run. And every board meeting was a discussion of when we were going to have to close because we were running out of money. And so a group of people said, hey, what if we started there was a Seinfeld episode. George Costanza decided to do everything the opposite. Tell people he lived at home with his mother and all this stuff. And so that's sort of what we did. It's like, what if we become so important and dynamic in the community that then if we had to close, people would be up in arms. So going from zero budget to 10 years ago, this year the city gave us $33,500, which to big libraries, that sounds like a very small amount, but for us, it's more than anything, it shows the commitment on the city's part and their approval of what we've been doing. So the library itself is about 3,000 square feet, basically one big room, and technology is our niche. Because I lived in large cities, I came here and realized the kids here didn't have the same opportunity as it related to technology as kids in larger cities. And I just started thinking about what will their lives be like? How prepared will they be when they get out of high school? And a strategic piece of it is the exciting things, buzzworthy media things are what brought us positive attention. And it also helped us get grants. And so, all things being equal, if we ever have the opportunity to do a program, we'll choose something that is more, eye-catching. So just to show you, upper left there is our esports team. Last year, we got an IMLS grant to start an esports team, which I will tell you, I am not a gamer myself. That's been a big learning curve, but I've come to appreciate connected learning. And so many programs before I did, I would think they were neat programs. I would think people would knock down the door and then nobody would show up. Esports has not been like that. They have been knocking down the door because this is social currency for kids. It's something that they understand and love. And then it's kind of like this back door into learning. It's problem-solving skills and communication and leadership, all kinds of things. So we've got esports going on. And we hire 2 esports players from a nearby college who coach that.
Dianne, could you explain what esports is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, esports is competitive online gaming. So it's like playing video games, but many times that stereotype is it's a kid down in the dark basement playing by himself, and he yells out, "Mom, bring me a sandwich," kind of thing. So esports is a team working together, and it really is a sport nationwide now. Gosh, I'm sure it's higher than this. There are 500 high schools who have esports teams, college scholarships for esports. And there is, in California, in fact, in Orange County, it's in the school system. It's written into the curriculum. So there are marketing classes for it. And it's not just the players. There's this whole ecosystem around it. So kids who don't even play but like to draw can do art, or their video editing opportunities, or event management. And so we have the kids, because internet is difficult in people's homes in our area, they're able to come here to the library and practice. And these particular computers are only reserved for esports. And you know, we're measuring, as all grants want you to do, what they're learning through this. So it really is a learning opportunity. It's not, they talk about, it's not just a thumb monkey, but it's also regulating emotions. You know, you don't throw your controller when you're mad, that kind of thing. So it branches out, in my mind, to all sorts of interesting opportunities. And just to tell you, when we did our kickoff event, so our school has about 1,400 students and 400 in the high school. And so the kickoff event, we did a tournament, which all we had at that time was somebody's Nintendo Switch and a projector, and we had 55 kids from high school sign up for it, which here is huge. And then we've had massive interest from middle schoolers. So we're developing a middle school program as well. And we love it. It's 10 years ago, this was not a kid-friendly library. And we're a no shushing library because we're in one big room. So people here just come and have fun and interact, more so before COVID than now, but I will. So you can see in the bottom right, that was actually when an esports practice was going on in the coach down there. So we're very colorful. It makes me happy when people open the door and are shocked at how bright and vibrant and everything is. So user experience for us is just huge. So it's 99% of the time, it really is a wonderful passion project. 1%, I can't stand it, but that's pretty good odds. So thinking strategically, again, because budget has been such a big issue, and I think that's coming even more so for all of us. When COVID started, we've always done this, but in particular with the pandemic, started thinking, okay, when we go before City Council in July and we're asking for a budget, what can we show them that we have done to help community resilience? And so for me, that's not just been about tweaking what we were doing before. It's, okay, what can we do that will really impress the people who are going to fund us? And I will say, in our community, we have stayed open, to answer your question, Todd, through all of this. Initially, we would had a sign on the door that said computer use by appointment. So we would let in 4 to 5 people during a day. The computers were spaced out, and then they could come in and work on the computer by appointment. A lot of people needed to print things. We have a notary. That was probably the most sobering thing that happened when the pandemic started, was people coming in to have their end-of-life documents and legal documents notarized. And I could kick myself because we had been talking about getting a notary for years, never did anything. And finally, about 6 months ago, we hired somebody who was a notary, and that's been fantastic. So we always want to think strategically. We have a seed library, and that was another thing that since the pandemic, people were very insecure in the beginning about what the food chain would look like. And so we just set up a table out front with seeds, and people could take as many as they wanted. We've got a community garden with, it's 100 individual beds and some charity beds. So we do a lot of gardening program anyway. And these seeds we get for just shipping cost from the suppliers because they can't sell them after a certain amount of time, so they just give them to us. So that's, you know, in the sustainability programming area, that's been a good thing for people. 3D printing, you know, what a trend that was whenever we got ours 3 or 4 years ago. I knew when we got it, and it was through a grant, that I didn't want to just make like cheap little tchotchkes. I wanted it to have a real purpose. And we did a few things, but it was so underutilized until this started. And we had it, I think for 2 weeks, we had it going almost around the clock. On the right, there's ear guards. A Canadian Boy Scout came up with the ear guard to hook onto the mask, because people who were wearing the mask long term, a lot of them, depending on how they fit, their ears were really hurting. And we had people eventually from all over the country calling us, emailing us, and we were shipping them out, you know, 100 at a time to food banks and hospitals and all of that. And then we made some of these masks on the left that if people could put in HEPA filters in those. Gosh, those took about 4 hours to print on our printer. But I showed you this because, again, with anything we gave out, we would add a little letter like, hey, please, you know, make a comment on our social media, just because that always gives us content that we can use in other ways. Let's see, sewing machines. We have a library of things, so we check out non-traditional items. We check out bicycles and canning supplies and outdoor games and baby gear, all kinds of things. But we have 5 sewing machines. And I don't know if I can see that plate, but we got those sewing machines for free. I think it's called the Sewing Machine Project, that will send libraries refurbished sewing machines, and they were great. And all they asked you to do is pay it forward in some way. And so we had these 5 sewing machines we check out, and then people in the community checked those out and made masks. And then the posting on the right was somebody posted on their Facebook page, you know, some more masks I made with the help from our local Pottsboro library. So again, it's just that effort to like really get the community involved, people talking about us, because we had a lot, I think even extra to overcome. For so many years, our library had not been kid-friendly, and it just had, you know, dusty old romance novels, nothing anybody wanted to read. And so for us, a big part of our effort has been, how do you overcome the stereotype? Because people don't know to question it if that's what they assume a library is. So masks have been, oh gosh, maybe 1,000 masks have come out of people making masks with our sewing machines. And just a couple of other ways during this. Of course, you know, the day schools closed, rural kids were locked out of school because so many people don't have internet here. So we were able to, we installed outside a more powerful wireless access point. And so people come to our parking lot to use that. We stayed open for telemedicine appointments. And now I'm writing another grant for that, because that's an area I see for rural libraries that can really expand. Because people couldn't get to the doctor, but we had a surgery follow-up appointment, mental health follow-up or mental health appointments, several things like that. The people aren't ill or have any contagious thing, but they still need to talk to the doctor. And in a lot of our rural communities, we've got the best internet around. And so, you know, if they're using a webcam, then they need faster internet. And I connected with local businesses when this started, like, hey, who's got a internet signal, that the wireless signal that they can turn on and take password protection off so that people can get to your parking lot to do what they need to do. And so then it helped promote them and cross-promote them, the grocery store and the Chamber of Commerce and that kind of thing. Again, transportation's an issue with that. I've found a lot of interesting resources through these outside organizations. I can highly recommend, and they have weekly calls, Schools Health and Library Broadband Coalition, Shelby. These are the people who are advocating for us on what is our funding going to look like in rural areas. Because now is the time. Everybody, we talked about it for years, but now it's kind of a bipartisan movement. Everybody's seeing, okay, there is the need. How do we fund it and make it happen? So Shelby, I've worked with quite a bit, and then Gigabit Libraries Network has, you know, great stuff that I've learned from them as well. And they've written letters of support for grants, and so that's been a good thing. Lots of e-cards we issued to the school. We ended up issuing to every high school student an e-card so that they could get in and use our ebooks and our databases and that kind of thing. And so City Hall, again, strategically, I want them to be up to date on what we have been doing during COVID. Because in small towns, it comes down to, okay, there's this little bit of bucket of money and our sewer lines are collapsing and the police need money and the fire department radios don't work. Oh, and then the library is asking for money. And so I really see us as an essential service. So I will write to city council, and then also on the distribution list, there's you know, county commissioners and county judges, and just all the things that we have going on. And I bet I'm not the only one. We do a quarterly meet the mayor thing here, and the last one, the county commissioner came in, and he was just shocked. It was, in his mind, all we did was check out books. So it's like they got to know what we've got going on. So yeah, I think that those are the main things we have been doing while we're closed. Now we are open, and we started checking out books. When we were closed, we didn't check out books at all. Now that we're open, we do check out books, and people so far have been policing themselves. We don't have that many people in the building at any one time. It would definitely be under 10 people in our building at any one time, but more often it's 2 or 3 people come in and do what they need to do. Lots of people, though, are you know, coming in to file unemployment and look for jobs.
So one of the things, Dianne, that I think most excited about was just some of the programming that you've managed to do during this COVID period, like the drive-in video gaming. Can you talk a little bit about just some of the programs you've
Yes.
during this time? Yeah.
Drive-in gaming came from, I don't know, I was on social media somewhere and people were saying, oh, I wish their drive-in movies were still around, because they are not here. And so we started thinking, since we're esports related, could we do a drive-in gaming night? And so that's our back parking lot there. And we weren't even sure how it would work. So we did a beta test. Everything's a beta test here. And that's a trailer that we use for pulling things to festivals and whatnot. Just turned it sideways, put a Nintendo Switch out there with the projector, and then it became a Mario Kart tournament. So people sat in their cars and played Mario Kart. And it was so much fun. It was, people yelling to each other from the cars. And then if they would do something, they'd start honking their horn. I mean, it just really was a blast, and people walking by. And I can't wait. Now we'll be able to start. Of course, it's getting super hot here, but I see this continuing, people bringing chairs, lawn chairs, bringing snacks, sitting out in the parking lot. And then, you could do like a step tournament, so people could be playing, various people could be playing in it, just a casual time.
Did you see more dads engaged than, normally during story time, you kind of will see traditionally more moms bringing the little ones, but did you see more dads bringing the kids to the library?
Yes, I'm thinking one in particular, and that's a real success story for us. One of the kids he's about 12, and he's got some learning differences. And when we did our kickoff event, in fact, he was the only middle school student who'd shown up. All the rest were high school. And the high school students started chanting for him, Pikachu, Pikachu. And I heard this loud chanting, but I didn't know at that point what they were cheering for. And I went out later, and the dad was comforting his son. The son was crying because he was so overwhelmed with emotion. And the dad looked at me and said, he's found his people.
I love that.
Yeah. So that dad and his son came, and they even ended up coming before dark, so they probably sat in the car, 30 minutes or something before it even started. And they were so happy to have a reason to get out of the house, to do something fun, socially distanced. One of the teenagers, the mom drove him, and it was just so funny to see this teen sitting in the car with the mom, because it's like, ooh, as a parent, I can appreciate this is an opportunity to capture them for some good conversation. It usually happens in the car.
Capture, yeah, that's the key.
Yeah, and just so you'll know, that building, that shed there, that kind of tan and blue, and that's our library of things. So that's where we keep those items.
Do you have any other programming examples?
Yes. Oh, and I will say I was particularly pleased because this story was picked up all over the world. I was getting media requests. I got United Kingdom and Finland and Australia. So it was all over the place. So, and it's so easy, you guys. If you've got a projector, you can do this. So I want to see, this was another thing that was the most fun for me. Ooh, I don't know if I shared computer sound when I shared the screen. Let me start this and see if this will work. See if you can hear it.
Seems like we're all in our own little boxes here lately, but the Pottsboro Library totally understands that we still need to talk to people and host meetings, and now we can do it virtually through Pottsboro Library's Zoom account. That's right. Yeah, you can check out a Zoom account on Pottsboro Library. I'll link all the information down below, and they have a lot of other items that you can check out. It's not your ordinary library, so contact Dianne at the Pottsboro Library and go check out the new Zoom account.
All right. I like that in the center box there was a local realtor who does such great things with video. And then each one of those boxes were local businesses. And we've changed this out with different local businesses. So they just sent him a picture and he plugged it in. But then it was a way for us as a library to support local businesses and keep their name out there. And we just thought of all kinds of like some of those were real fun and silly things you could do. It makes me smile too, because when he says, call Dianne at the library, you know you're in a small town when that's the message. Hey, call Dianne at the library. So we check out Zoom rooms now for people. Not my original idea at all. I got the idea off of one of the weekly calls with the Gigabit Library Network. And it's, I think they pronounce it SCLO Library. It's in Pennsylvania, State College, Pennsylvania. And on their website, and I can send a link if you're interested, they have this whole Google Doc of exactly how it works, what to do, workflow. I mean, so it's been, we've done Bible studies, cocktail parties, board meetings, all kinds of things. So that's been a way to help the community as well.
Yeah, if you could send that, that would be amazing. We can get it
Okay.
out. I think people would.
Will do. Yeah, so those are the ones that come to mind that that we've been working on lately.
So with your library doors just being open, you know, my library is most likely opening next week. It's, what are people saying? I mean, when they come in, are they just expressing gratitude for just being open and having the opportunity? Or, I mean, is there any kind of common theme coming from people?
Yeah, a lot of people are just glad that we're open, and sometimes surprised that we're open. I've picked up on people who are in greater need for services. I think libraries now are going to be more important than ever. And internet-wise, for us, has been a big thing. This was one thing that we did, and in fact, these people are out in California now too. The Information Technology Disaster Resource Center is a nationwide nonprofit. They're not going to charge you a penny, but if you have a technology need, they have volunteers and hardware, software all over the U.S. To help people. And what I know of them being in California is with the wildfires in Northern California, they had deployed internet network. I think they said 17,000 homes had burned. So they were up there and had set up, internet networks for people to use. In our case, I contacted them and they brought over this trailer, mobile Wi-Fi trailer. And again, this is outside of city limits. It was a good partnership because the hotel in the background there, it was just another way to help promote them. And so this Wi-Fi trailer has attracted, the upper left, you see, we know her well. She's been coming here for years. It's a grandmother who's disabled and she's raising her grandchildren. And they live in the apartments behind where that Wi-Fi trailer is, and they don't have a car. And so when the schools closed, it was, how do the kids do their homework? So they were sitting out on the curb working on their homework. And that was a board member sent me that picture and said there was another guy in his car working on his GED as well. And then a picture of a college student working on his homework. And so there are just all kinds of opportunities out there, but I hear so much talk now about mobile hotspots and our parking lot Wi-Fi, which is good, but it is not enough. And I think we need to be advocating for internet as a utility for people. I mean, in Texas, in August, you're not going to want to be sitting out by that trailer, doing your work, or when it's 42 degrees. So I'm really now working on getting people, being part of the movement so that people can have internet in their homes. So part of that, and this has been another learning curve, I contacted some, it's Connected Nation, who does a lot of work for rural areas. And the maps that are available on what internet coverage looks like in rural areas they're wildly inaccurate. It shows that Pottsboro has fabulous coverage. Like, why would you even question it? And so I've gotten together the bottom, or 2 different providers in our area, map them in general. But my next step is to do some kind of probably like door-to-door, really paint the picture of what internet looks like here. University of Michigan, and I can send this to you too, their School of Information, University of Michigan, will take on projects. And last year they did a project for me that I wanted to find out how to keep metadata for our esports videos. And so their graduate students designed over a semester this whole program on, here's, the security things you need, here's metadata. It did it all for me. And this year I have asked them if they will come up with a way to truly find out what internet coverage looks like in our area.
So Dianne, with internet coverage and just the digital inclusion, you talked a lot earlier about kind of advocating with your, city council. What tips do you have as far as just communicating the digital divide to decision makers who have the luxury of having internet because of their, socioeconomic background, and communicating that real challenge that there are people, who in August are going to have to wait outside on a curb to maybe access their schoolwork? I mean, do you have any tips just around that?
Yeah, I brag on the Pottsboro Library quite a bit. And actually through Linda Todd, somehow I got connected with the advocacy office at ALA. Okay. And I just started emailing them, hey, guess what we're doing? And all these stories. And then they said, well, would you talk to some media? So we ended up with, this was the biggest, most well-known outlet, with an article in Consumer Reports. And I know the media, and I guess everybody, they like the human interest piece of it to make it real. And so I was able to talk to them about a patron we had who, in one morning, he had called to file for unemployment 143 times and couldn't get through. And so he came to the library and we were able to connect him with the benefits he needed. And this reporter ended up calling that patron with his permission and talking to him about, and he really sang the praises of, this is what the library has meant to me, kind of thing. And so to answer your question, a lot of what I do is advocacy, just trying to get our name in the media as much as possible, because that makes an impression with city council. Like working with EDGE, I did a webinar for EDGE in rural libraries in California. And when I present and I say, yes, I'm working on a project with Bill Gates, that makes me sound a little more impressive than just, who they know me from the grocery store kind of thing. So that's what I would say, is just a lot of letting people know about what we're doing. You always hear that libraries are maybe not too good at that, about telling what they're doing. And so that's something I make sure of that we do, and then sending the newsletters. And I go to all the city council meetings. They're pretty boring most of the time, but my name is there and in front of their mind. So I think that's it. And then for me, strategically, I was at a meeting this morning with a school district, not even our school district, it's a neighboring district, because we're working on building a countywide coalition to provide internet for every low-income student in the county. and it'll be a coalition of public libraries and school districts and cities. And so I think, we get credibility by aligning ourselves with others who have the same goals we do.
Well, and even to be, invited to that table with the school district to be part of that collaboration is huge, because, some libraries really are their own thing and they don't really collaborate that much with it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to check the time because I think that we could probably talk for hours about this. Where are we with time?
You're doing pretty well. It's about 11:13 right now.
Okay. So do we want to open it up for some questions for Dianne, everyone?
I think that's a good idea.
If you want to do the chat, I can read it out, or we've got a small enough group, you can just go for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd, if you would read me, and I'll put up, there's my contact information if anybody afterwards wants to contact me. I'd be happy to share. It was interesting from the Library 2.0, I got more questions afterwards about the Library of Things than anything else.
The sewing machines, I bet really, for your free sewing machines, people get interested.
And folks, we're a small enough group. Don't feel shy about unmuting and asking a question. We should be able to manage that. But type in the chat if you'd like. I'm going to type a question into the chat. Okay. I'm interested about the telemedicine. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. So basically, you had patrons who were coming who needed to get in touch with their doctors but didn't have the ability to get online with them at home. Is that what was happening?
That's correct, yes. And then it's that digital literacy piece too. A lot of people don't know how to, even if they had the connection at home, they don't understand, because there are a lot of new apps now that doctors are using. So it would be getting them set up for the appointment and just helping make sure they were comfortable. And they just had the webcam and put on a headset. Now that happened while we were limiting people in here, because again, one big space, there's not privacy. So in the grant I'm writing, there are these soundproof booths that are almost like, they're different sizes, but like a telephone booth. And so that's my plan, is to get one of those so that people can be in there going forward and having this silent space. Otherwise, I'll just put them in my my office and not do that. But also, it is so funny how money, I guess it's like money follows money. I don't know if they have this in California. Here they have Council of Governments. So it's the Texoma Council of Governments. And they ended up with $7,800 from a grant that had not been spent, that they need to spend by this August. And they are also interested in healthcare, particularly for veterans and older adults. So they've dedicated that $7,800 to transporting people to the library to have telemedicine appointments.
Amazing. Okay, well, it seems like it's a quiet group. Any other questions? Last chance.
Dianne, this is Jackie. I'll put my camera on. You mentioned several times about your use of social media, and I think that sounds like it's a really strong piece for you. Can you give us some strategies or techniques on how to make that work?
Well, and for us, it's that was essential because our town does not have a newspaper. It doesn't have a newspaper, and then the TV stations are in neighboring communities. They always like content, so I do contact them, and they've been great about providing coverage. But I've heard of Pew Institute, Lee Rainey from Pew Institute, several years ago at an ARSL conference, and he was talking about libraries looking for niches. And one, he said, unmet niche was being the media connection in a town and the source of distributing news of what's going on, because here it's mostly word of mouth. And I still get people who come in, they live 3 blocks away, and they'll say, oh, I never knew there was a library here, which drives me nuts. But so we do that, social media a lot, Facebook, not so many followers on Twitter, but lots and lots of Facebook. And then we've just tried to, when we have something going on, we will post it to other groups. Like there's a Crunchy Moms group. So when we have some sustainability or kids thing, we post it to them. And then we always, one of the library of things items we have is an egg incubator. And so we put gentle pressure on people when they check that out. Like, hey, would you be willing to do a short video or a picture and then tag us on Facebook with it? And so we've got pictures of like, hey, look at all my new chicks that hatched thanks to the Pottsboro Library.
One thing to add, what Dianne was saying is I was on our local NPR station last week, and a friend of mine actually works there, and he said, libraries, contact your local radio stations, community calendars, because they are desperate for content to put out there. So there's a really good chance of getting your info out that way too, because things are quieter right now. So,
and I feel like people in the beginning were really wanting positive news story. I think that's why the drive-in gaming was such a hit, because it was so much doom and gloom. And so like, oh, here's something fun somebody's doing.
Yeah, I agree. The good news thing is it's more important than ever before.
Dianne, you have so many great ideas. It's awesome. Is there a protocol that you have to follow, like taking your ideas to the city manager for approval, or do you just get to fly with it and succeed?
Yes, you touched on an important part, and it is such a double-edged sword. Along with the city not being able to provide much funding, they have not established this big bureaucracy that we have to wade through. So we can have an idea in the morning and say, hey, let's do that this afternoon, and do it. I mean, that has been, so I'm a volunteer director. I've done this as a volunteer for 10 years now, and it is because of that ability to innovate that has made this my passion project. If I had to wade through boards, I would not enjoy it nearly as much. That being said, when we apply for a large like state or federal grant, I do have to get city council approval on it, because they're the legal entity. So, but that's a good thing too, because I get to go to city council, present, they hear how much we are working to bring in money, and then hear what we've got going on. But most of the things, if I run it by the city manager, he'll say, like, if it doesn't cost us money, fine. So
awesome.
There was recently, I got a national network of libraries medicine grant. I don't, here there's a private water company that provides water in our area, and the water quality is awful. Like you have to replace a hot water heater every 3 years. I thought in America people had decent water coming out of their taps, but it's very suspect here, and we always get at least twice a year these warnings like, hey, if you're old or you have chronic health conditions or you're young, you should not be drinking your water. It's a little concerning. So I did get a grant to have EPA water testing kits, 25 water testing kits, and they're almost $200 a piece. And so we spread it out all around our zip code to get a good representation of this and get water quality testing. And I promised up front, he didn't ask me to, but in that case, I said, we're doing outside city limits, not inside city limits, when I presented it to the city manager, because honestly, I didn't want to stir up some kind of problem for him. So we just did outside of city limits. And I am thrilled and still shocked to say the testing results came back very, very good. There were probably 4 or 5 homes that their particular homes, it looks like, had arsenic, lead, or chromium that were affecting them. But then you can get a reverse osmosis system. So to me, that's one of those things, like, who would have thought of a library involved with water testing? But again, it's this is the people's community, and what do they need? And water quality was a big issue that people discussed here.
And Dianne, your library, it's 100% volunteer run, right?
Not anymore. We have one paid staff member who's fabulous. Hiring the right person is important. We have one paid staff member, and then there's a federal program called SEP. It's Senior Citizen Employment Program. So we have 2 of those workers who work with us to do work as well. But yeah, with that 33,000, other than grants, the 33,500 plus the 2,200 from the county, that is our all-in operating budget.
Wow, that's so impressive. Kudos to you. Well, do we have time to break out into the separate chats groups, or?
We can, if people would like. We're at 11:24, so we can do that if people would like to do that, or we can continue with the phone conversation. Please maybe we can just use the chat and see if people have a preference about whether they'd like to go into breakout rooms or continue to talk with Dianne.
Yeah, let us know. Okay, we got more Dianne.
Yeah, that's what everybody.
I'm interested in the esports that you mentioned was done at your library. Is that the Mario Kart that you mentioned, or it's something different?
That is they pick a game for the season, because we have a competitive team. You don't have to have a competitive team. In fact, there's an organization in California, NASEF, it's the North America Scholastic Esports Federation, that on their website, they have a ton of free resources, what hardware, software, how you need to do it. They set up tournaments. It is all absolutely free. And it's just a huge foundation with a bunch of money behind it, who this has become their passion. And so Overwatch is what our team is playing this semester, but they've got, when we did the kickoff, we put up like a talk back board of what game would you like to see. Different games attract different people. So some of the people said, hey, when you start playing like Madden, NFL or something, let me know, because that's what they want to play, but they don't want Overwatch. So that just grew out of a partnership with the school district, and it still confounds me. For so long, here is a library, we would try to go to the school and say, hey, how can we support you? And they were standoffish, which I'll never understand. We started making inroads through individual teachers and having some luck, but through esports, and I am hoping it grows into an official UIL team sport in Texas, and that it becomes a school curriculum. So that we've partnered with them really well on the esports. But yeah, go to the NASEF. I think it's esportsfed.org is the website, but it's everything you would ever need for free on there.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hey, Dianne, I'm wondering if you want to stop sharing your screen, we might be able to see everybody's faces, and that might help our conversation a little bit. We're such a small group that if there's anybody out there who wants to unmute and ask questions.
Stop share. There we go.
There we go. So, not trying to put anybody on the spot, but this is a little more intimate. It's a little more, it's like, I think this is the breakout group right now. Hey, Barbara.
Can you hear it? There's a train whistle in the background. This is rural town. Trains going through every hour.
My library's right next to a train too.
People comment on my birds. They hear my birds, and I don't even notice them. I'm rural too, very rural.
There is one town in East Texas that the library is in an old train depot, and when the train goes by, it will literally knock books off the shelf. So we're not quite that close to the train track. Well, I just want to say that I think rural libraries, I'm just now working on my MLS, which I never thought I wanted, but because, and through that, sometimes I felt unworthy that like a rural library, because there are some networking groups and libraries in Texas that the big boys are, the Fort Worth library system in Dallas, and sometimes I would just feel like I wasn't being heard as a rural librarian. And now I am such a believer in the work we're doing and how important it is, and that we get to see people on such a personal basis, that I do see now that we're probably the ones that are more important than they are.
Well, that's how we met, Dianne.
You're very connected.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I'm very impressed. And, you know, how long have we heard about Library of Things? We don't do a Library of Things, and I have 35 libraries, so many of them very small, like the one in my community, and that's my backyard behind me. But that's an awesome thing to take on. I mean, that's a big deal.
And that's so scalable, because even I've heard of libraries starting with cookie cutters. I mean, so you could do like little kids' educational games or cookie cutters, small things. I will say, just as an aside, our most popular things are the carpet cleaner and the pressure washer.
Wow, good. That's a good thing.
And Dianne, you said that you have canning supplies. Is that what you said? I heard canning supplies at first, and was like, what? So basically, like the stuff for the heating up, and basically just do they teach themselves, or do you have like some kind of instructions that go with it, or?
Yes, we had, there's a community college with a culinary school near here. And so we've partnered with them, and they taught some canning classes. We've done an Instant Pot class too. So yeah, a lot of the things in the Library of Things lend themselves to programming being built around it. We've got a lot of like gardening supplies and the egg incubator, that sort of thing. So you can really build it into library programming.
Awesome.
Want to monopolize. I have another question about the Zoom account. That it sounds like you're circulating. Is it a matter of just sharing the login information or the account with somebody else and they run it, or do you host the meeting kind of like I'm hosting right now? How does that work?
I have been hosting, and that's the way the SLO library sets it up as well. I've been hosting. I was contacted by one of the writers from TechSoup who heard me mention it on the webinar, and he was interested in it. And And then he said, well, what about the legality of doing that? And so he's researching that. I said, well, don't write the article if it's not legal to be doing that. So we would not do well in prison.
We don't want you there.
It'd be an amazing article to read, librarian in prison, for sure.
Yeah, and then I would start a big prison library, I'm sure. The library of things would be all sorts of interesting.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
Great. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'll stop. I could ask questions all day long. I think it's fascinating. And I did not know you were a volunteer director. That's really impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's worked well in terms of maybe the city feels even a little more inclined to support us because we've gotten, I mean, people in Australia talking about Pottsboro is because of the library. I've had people tell me they moved to Pottsboro because of the library. So all of that stuff. And I will say my goal when I started this was to get to the place that the city could afford to pay a paid director. And I said, I will stay here and volunteer until the city is in the position to do that. Or if it becomes clear we can't, we'll lock the doors, which was going to happen anyway. But we are on our way to do that. I mean, now the city is talking about building a new municipal building. They want the library in it. So we see the commitment on their part. So at some point we'll be able to walk away and know that the foundation has been laid to have the library be just the center of the community.
Well, and it's so interesting hearing you, Dianne, because I remember when we met, you were talking about esports, and then through YALSA, hearing you, you know, with the whole progression of it. And it's interesting to hear it now kind of after it's been implemented and what it's been doing for your community. So I'm glad I got to see that next connection to it.
Thanks for inviting me here. There's nothing I like to talk about more than rural libraries.
Dianne, this is Jackie. A quick question before you leave. Do you get any state library support? Maybe that was already asked, but is there any state funding that comes from the state library?
Grants are available through them, competitive grants, and support in terms of I will ask them a question and you know, they're always very helpful, but no funding through the state.
How about, are you in a cooperative system of any kind for resource sharing among geographically?
Overdrive. We are in a system for, gosh, I don't even know how many libraries are in it. For our ebooks, we are.
Does that get paid from your $33,000 budget, or
yes.
Is that, oh.
Are there any databases that the state provides all libraries in the state that can help? Yes,
they do. We've had very low usage despite promoting them, but now that I've worked on my MLS, I have thought like, okay, well, maybe now I see a little more what they could do, and then I can offer that to patrons because I really never knew how to offer them before. Good. Now I can do a search, all that stuff. But I think small libraries, to me, being entrepreneurial and having an entrepreneurial mindset is has been the key to our success, being able to adapt quickly, turn on a dime to what we're doing. I took Harwood Institute training, which was very valuable for me about, you know, connecting with the community about what they really wanted rather than what we want to offer them.
Right. That's great.
Well, guys, this has been great. What do you think, Todd? Does anybody have any last questions before? Dianne, you've been so generous with your time.
Thank you. I'm glad to do it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I've taken a lot of notes, and I'll probably be emailing you.
Feel free. Yeah, feel free.
Thank you, Dianne.
Thank you. Great about sharing information.
This was a good call.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough, Dianne. We were talking about what to do, and I was like, well, I know Dianne. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I got so excited that he did. It's like, yay!
All right, you know how to find me.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that Pikachu, the Nintendo. My 23-year-old is a Pokemon fanatic. He can tell you everything, and he's been that way since he was 7. And he still collects cards, and he gets so excited when he opens them. He just had a birthday last week, and he got a ton of Pokemon stuff. And he sits there and he goes through all the cards with us and tells us exactly what's going on with them. And